COVID-19 prompts enormous rise in demand for cheap child labor in India, which has set the country back decades on child exploitation. The COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown that followed erased decades worth of progress with child labor, child trafficking, and child marriage in India. The lockdown and the economic collapse that followed created a perfect storm of poverty and exploitation. Schools, which are not only vital for education but act as an essential surveillance mechanism to ensure that children are kept out of the hands of child traffickers and not pushed into arranged underage marriage, have been closed since March. Over 1,200 children were rescued from being trafficked illegally to work in factories or farms between April and September, a spike unlike anything ever seen before. The children were usually aged between 8 and 18, though some were as young as 6. Their average salary was usually 1,000 rupees, which equals 10.5 pounds per month, around 40 pence per day. In India, all child labor is illegal for children under the age of 14, with a few minor exceptions, and between 14 and 18 children are banned from any work that is hazardous or will affect their development. But over the past 6 months, child labor and child marriage have become coping mechanisms for families who have fallen into debt and poverty during the pandemic.
At the same time, demand for cheap child labor has risen enormously. When lockdown began to lift in June and factories reopened, work for adults' daily wage workers still proved hard to come by. Industry, keen to make up for 3 months of losses, sent recruiters out to rural villages looking for the cheapest labor possible children. With impoverished families deep in debt and their children not in school, many agreed to send their sons and daughters to work in garment factories, Bangla making sweatshops, farms, and restaurants. After lockdown, the traffickers refused to hire the adults for work. They told the families they would only hire the children, so the families felt they had no choice. What follows then is a cycle of poverty and vulnerability and exploitation. Villages in the state of Bihar, one of the poorest in India, which is estimated to have over 1 million children in labor, have been a particular target for laborers, recruiters, and traffickers. Unfortunately, this humanitarian crisis that includes tens of millions of children does not have nearly enough visibility. The pandemic has also ensured the community mechanisms in place to prevent child marriage in states such as Rajasthan. India has the third highest number of child marriages globally, and a recent report by Save the Children estimated that 200,000 more children would be forced into marriage this year due to the circumstances linked to COVID 19. Child marriages have gone up sharply because villagers realized that no one was watching anymore, that government and law enforcement was preoccupied with COVID-19. So they saw this as an opportunity to arrange for their daughters to get married.
COVID-19 prompts enormous rise in demand for cheap child labor in India, which has set the country back decades on child exploitation. The COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown that followed